The desert night was still. The only sounds the distant hum of the wind and the soft rhythmic thumping of Kline's heartbeat. The assassin stood at the edge of a hill, his dark eyes trained on the compound below. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, was sitting in a courtyard beneath the light of a single flickering lantern. From this distance he looked like a mere shadow against the earth, but Kline knew that the shadows often held the greatest threats. He had been sent to eliminate that threat. For months, Kline had trained for this moment. He had studied Traoré's movements, understood his strategies, and gathered every piece of intel on the man who had become a symbol of defiance and hope for a fractured continent. The world watched as Traoré rose from the chaos of political upheaval, a young leader promising to tear down the chains of colonialism and oppression. To some, he was a hero. To others, he was a threat to the old order. Kline had been hired by foreign powers, those who feared Traoré's vision for an independent Africa, a vision that could spark a revolution across the continent. They feared the change he represented. And so Kline's mission was simple: infiltrate, destroy. As he stood there, watching the man who could alter the fate of an entire continent, doubt began to creep into Kline's thoughts. He had seen men fall for less. Traoré's enemies had been numerous, but none had been as relentless, as determined as Kline himself. His hand tightened around the grip of his weapon. The mission had been clear, until now. The weight of the gun felt heavier than ever before. The next morning, as the golden light of dawn crept across the land, Kline found himself in a small local cafe. The air was thick with the smell of freshly baked bread and brewed coffee. He could hear the distant murmur of voices, the sound of plates clattering, and the hum of a radio in the corner playing news reports from the outside world. But none of that reached Kline. His mind was elsewhere. On the mission. On the man he was supposed to kill. Sitting at the table across from him was Joseph, a local informant who had been in the employ of foreign powers for years. Joseph had spent his life on the inside, collecting information, feeding it to those who paid for it. He had lived through the years of oppression, the revolutions, the betrayals. But even he was not untouched by the aura of Traoré. "You can't." "Stop it," Joseph said, his voice low but charged with emotion. "You don't know the whole story. Traoré isn't just a leader. He's a symbol that's bigger than all of us." Kline's eyes narrowed. "I'm here to stop that symbol." Joseph smiled bitterly. "You think you're just killing a man, but you're not. You're killing the idea of freedom, of a future that's different. You're helping those who want to keep the chains around us." Kline had heard this before. He had heard the whispers of the people, the ones who called Traoré their savior. But it wasn't his job to question. His job was to execute. The room was silent for a long moment. Kline's hand rested on the table, his fingers tracing the lines of the wood as he stared at Joseph. Finally, Joseph leaned forward. "I don't think you know what you're doing. I don't think you understand what he's fighting for, and I don't think you understand the price of what's about to happen if you succeed." Kline rose, throwing down a few bills on the table. "I've already made my choice." As Kline left the cafe, his heart raced. The mission had become something different. The line between right and wrong had blurred. But there was no turning back now. He had to finish what he started. The world couldn't afford to let Traoré succeed. The moment Kline stepped into the compound, he saw the man he had been sent to kill. Ibrahim Traoré stood alone in the courtyard, his posture strong, but his face was soft with an expression of peaceful contemplation. The young leader was not what Kline had expected. He had expected anger, a man constantly on the defensive, but what he saw instead was a man at peace with his purpose. Traoré was not afraid of his enemies. He was resolute in his conviction. Kline took a deep breath and began to approach, but as he walked closer, something stirred inside him. He hadn't planned for this. The mission had been clear: kill Traoré, eliminate the threat. But there was something in Traoré's eyes, a glimmer of hope, of purpose that made Kline falter. Traoré's voice broke through Kline's thoughts. "You've been sent to kill me. But it's not me you need to kill." Kline froze. his breath catching in his throat. How did Traore know? The enemy isn't me, Traore continued, his voice calm, unhurried. It's the system that seeks to divide us, the lie that says some of us must remain slaves, that some of us must serve others. The ones who feed off our suffering, they are your true enemy. Kline's mind reeled. The man before him was not the ruthless tyrant he had been led to believe. Instead, he was a leader who fought for his people's freedom. He wasn't fighting for power. He was fighting for justice. And Kline realized in that moment that he had been a pawn in someone else's game. As Kline struggled with the weight of this revelation, a small boy appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. His eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else in them. Hope, perhaps. He stepped forward and handed Kline a small, crumpled letter. Kline took it, his hands shaking as he unfolded the paper. The letter was written in Traore's handwriting. It was a letter to the world, a call to arms, not against external forces, but against the systems of greed and exploitation that had strangled Africa for centuries. The letter spoke of a new future, one where Africa could stand proud and strong, free from the chains of colonialism. The boy looked up at Kline with tears in his eyes. "You have to stop them," he whispered. "Don't let them destroy him. He's the only chance we have." Kline's mind raced. The lies he had been fed for so long, the justification for his mission, all of it began to unravel. He had been blinded by the promise of power, of success. But now, he saw the truth. He wasn't here to kill a man. He was here to kill hope. Kline stood in front of Traore, the weight of his past bearing down on him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then finally, Kline dropped his weapon to the ground. "I've been wrong," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been fighting for the wrong side." Traore nodded, his eyes filled with compassion. "You're not broken. You're becoming. We all have a choice. You made yours." In that moment, something inside Kline shifted. He realized that this was not the end of his story. This was only the beginning. He had been given a second chance, a chance to stand for something greater than himself. Together with Traore, they would fight for a new future. They would stand side by side, united in their vision for a free and just Africa. The world watched in disbelief as the assassin who had been sent to kill the young leader now stood beside him, fighting for the very cause he had once been paid to destroy. The news spread like wildfire. Kline had become Traore's most unexpected ally. Together, they defied the forces that sought to crush their hopes and dreams. In the months that followed, Kline worked alongside Traore, traveling across Africa, meeting with leaders, inspiring change. They were no longer enemies. They were partners in a movement that would change the course of history. The sun set on that day as Kline stood beside Traore, watching the world begin to change. The weight of the past had lifted, and in its place, there was hope. A hope that would never be extinguished. And as the wind whispered through the trees, Traore turned to Kline and spoke the words that would echo in his heart forever. "Together, we will rewrite history." If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today.